Good day, everyone. This is our report from Group 3. So, our lesson is all about communication and language. So, we're going to first tackle what is communication, what is the meaning of communication and language. So, let's first in language. Language is a system of communication. So, part siya ng communication natin. Pag sinabing communications, two or more people that convey message, thought, or something information, so like that. So language is a system of communication that relies on verbal or non-verbal codes to transfer information. So what I said before, communication is giving information or thoughts. So ayun, yung language natin pwede siyang i-rely sa verbal and non-verbal. Pag sinabi ng verbally, so ginagawa natin verbally, so sinasalita natin yung language natin. Pag sinabi namang non-verbal, ito yung i-base natin sa written, I think. So, ayun. Tapos, sinasabi rin dito, communication is a way of interchanging message or information between two or more people. So, yung kagaya ng sinabi ko na hindi magkakaroon ng communications pag once na walang exchanging of information. I'm going to give example of that in a certain classroom. So, may teacher, kunyari ako yung teacher and estudyante. So, habang nagtatopic ako, so ako yung, para mangyari, ako yung sender. So, nagko-convey ako ng message para may matutunan yung mga estudyante ko. So, ayun, parang, and then, in that certain things, pwede tayong masabi na yung student natin is sila yung receiver. So, parang two or more. So, pero hindi lang pwede sabihin two or more. So, pwede natin sabihin yung mga SONA, like our President Roa Duterte. So, ayun, pwede mo siyang communication na din yun. Kasi, basta, pag sinabi communication, nagsasalita ka tapos nagbibigay ng thoughts or information like that. So, ayun. So, we're going to, it's focusing on the message language, it's focusing on the message. So, parang sa communication, ang pinay-focus is yung thought or yung message or information na sinasabi natin. So, ayun. And language is a tool of communication. And communication is the process of transferring message. So, alam naman natin yan. So, this is discuss the following. We're going to discuss communication, the origin of language, history of linguistics, relationship between language and culture. So, next slide. Yan, communication. So, next slide. What is communication? So, communication is described as an act of interchanging ideas, information, or message from one person or place to another via words or signs which are understood to both parties. So, kagaya na sinabi ko kanina, basta pag once na two or more, nag-uusap kayo, pwede naman sabing communication na yan. Oo, mga ganun. Tapos, for communication, so, additional information lang, hindi porket communication or more on salita na yun, verbal or non-verbal. So, yun, verbal lang tayo palagi. So, may sinasabing non-verbal. So, pag once na sinabing non-verbal communication, dun papasok yung mga readings, mga written. So, hindi pala, yung, sign. So, for example of that, makakuha ng information by the sign. So, example is, for example, may nakita kong tattoo na, tapos may dalang mga, something na nakakatakot. So, parang, magkakaroon ako ng information, hindi ko pwedeng lapitan tong tao. So, baka kasi, maraming pumapasok sa utak natin na, baka to, magnanakaw, rape, ganun. So, in that way, because of the sign, nagkaroon ng information. So, ayun. So, communication process, kung paano ba talaga nagpa-process yung communication na sinasabi natin. So, communication is a continuous process which mainly involves three elements: the sender, message, and the receiver. And the elements involved in the communication process are explained below. So, makikita natin dyan. A message is encoded, then sent from one individual, it came from our sender, and to another, so the receiver, through a channel. So, pag sinabing channel, may ginagamit tayong bagay para yung in-encode nating information is mapunta kay receiver. From sender, receiver, channel. So, message pala rather. Sorry. Message, sender, receiver, and Sunod is decode and feedback. So, i-explain natin yan. Pag once, may makikita tayo dito na na isang diagram. So, ayun. Pero I'm going to classify muna is what communication can be classified as non-verbal, verbal, non-verbal, written, and visual also. So, next slide, makikita natin dito yung graphs. So, nakikita nyo dito may sender, pababa siya, encoding, message, channel, receiver, decoding, feedback. Tapos, dun sa tatlong tapos mayroon noise do sa message, channel, and receiver. So, I'm going to explain this. So, bilang isang sender, siya yung nag-encode. For example, nag-encode ako ng message. So, nag-encode sa utak ko. So, encoding na yan. So, sender ako, nag-encode ako ng message or information. Tapos, yung ine-encode natin information or message, yun yung magiging message ng communication process. So, meron na tayong sender and message. So, after nun, paano ba natin maipapasa yung message na ginawa ng sender? So, through that, I'm going to rely the digital. For example, ang ginamit ko is Messenger or Facebook. So, through that, pwede siyang i-connect sa channel. Kasi, yun ang ginamit natin para makapag-send ng information or thoughts to the another people. So, ayan. At meron ditong receiver. So, ito na yan. So, for example, nag-chat na ako sa'yo. So, I'm a sender. Nag-concrete na ako ng information and thoughts. So, I'm going to process to the channel or the messenger. So, I'm going to send to, for example, sasend ako sa kaibigan ko. So, through that, papasok doon yung receiver, yung sinasabi ng receiver. Kasi, siya yung tatanggap ng message or information or thoughts na galing kay sender. So, ayan. Receiver. Tapos, after makuha ng receiver yun, i-encode na yan. Kunyari, babasahin niya. Decoding rather. Dinedecode niya sa utak niya yan. Kung ano yung magiging response niya or ano yung information na nalaman niya. So, in that way, the word response, pag once nag-response yung receiver to the sender, doon na papasok yung the word feedback. As the feedback is the most important in the communication process. Kasi, hindi mo masasabi na communication process takes place pag once na walang feedback, walang reply. Diba? So, sabi nga, diba, pag sinabing communication is sharing, interchange of message or information. So, hindi mo siya pwedeng sabihin na communication na pag once hindi nagkaroon ng feedback or comments like that. So, ayun. And, so, ayun lang din. Tapos, ipapasok ko na dun yung sinasabing noise. So, meron dito nakalagay ng noise sa message, channel, and receiver. So, paano ba lang naman masasabi kung may noise ay nakaka-apekto ba talaga ang noise sa communication process? So, as possible, pwede. It depends, di ba? For example, sa message, sa noise, pag sa message kasi, pag sa nag-encode ka, parang hindi mo maisip kung concrete information na gusto mo iparating sa receiver. Sorry. Tapos, mayroon dito yung channel. So, pag sinasabing channel, diba sinabi ko kanina, gumamit ako ng Messenger or Facebook or digital technology. Gumamit ako para ma-convey ko yung message na galing kay sender to the receiver. So, papapasok yung noise dyan. Pag sinabing noise, I'm going to give example of that is internet connection. Hindi ka pwedeng hindi ka pwedeng for example, mali-mali yung para mas madali yung information, sa tawag na lang. So, gumamit ako ng cellphone. Cellphone is going to example of channel. Tumawag sa cellphone. So, mahina ko, for example, mahining signal. So, yung sinasabi ng sender, hindi maintindihan ng receiver. So, magkakaroon ng apekto doon sa message na gusto mong ibigay or information na yung gusto mong ibigay sa receiver. So, ito sa receiver. Parang ganun sa receiver. Pag once nag-encode ka, hindi mo maintindihan. Environmental mo, for example, nakikinig ka ng information, tapos ang ingay na kabalikid mo, may possible na hindi mo maintindihan yung information na gustong ipahatid ng sender sa'yo. So, yun yung papasok yung the word noise. So, dun po natin, dun po yung nag-text space yung communication process. So, ayun. And I'm going to proceed in our next slide is the origin of language.
Okay, so let's proceed to the origins of language. But first, let us know what does language means. So, language is one of the best means by which humans communicate. So, ang ibig sabihin raw, ang wika ay isang paraan para makapag-usap o magkaroon ng komunikasyon ng mga tao. The importance of language is that language is everywhere. It permeates our thoughts, mediates our relationship with others or relations with others. Human knowledge and culture is stored and transmitted. It says that there are 2,796 languages in the world. And there are a lot of theories, but the origins of language remains a speculation. Kung saan, kung ano ba yung talaga yung pinagmula ng language ay parang haka-haka o pinaniwalaan na lamang ng mga tao. What we know is that spoken language developed well before written language. So, how and when did language originate? So, ito ay nabuo sa apat, which are the origins of language are the natural sound source, physical adaptation source, genetic source, and divine source. The natural sound source is that primitive words could have been imitation of natural sound which early men are heard around them, like cow. This is example of sound of flying objects. Coco, sound of a flying creature. And it says that people started to imitate these sounds and name the objects and creatures with these sounds. In addition to cuckoo, splash, bang, boom, rattle, buzz, hiss, and roar. This is known as bow wow theory or bow wow theory on onomatopoeic words. So, ano ba yung onomatopoeia? So, onomatopoeia ay kilala bilang paghihimik sa wikang Tagalog. Ang ibig sabihin nito ay ang paggamit ng mga salita kung saan ang tunog o himig ay nagagawang maihatid. So, ang bow wow theory naman ay this is the early human tried to imitate the sound and use it to refer to the things associated with them. So, ang teoryang bow wow ay ang mga wika na nagmula sa paggaya ng mga sinaunang tao sa mga tunog na nalilikha ng mga hayop. At pinaniniwalaan din na nabuo ng mga primitibong tao ang kanilang mga unang salita sa paggagaya nito. So, natuto sila, na-adapt nila yung mga salita dahil sa tunog ng mga hayop. Sinasabi pang kagaya ng mga sanggol na nag-uumpisang magsalita. Mga nagagaya-gaya na lang mga salitang kanilang natututunan. At sinasabi din na ginagaya yung mga tunog na kanilang naririnig. Halimbawa ng mga tunog ay bawaw para sa aso, nyaw para sa pusa, kwakwak para sa pato, at mu para sa baka. Marahil ito ang dahilan kung bakit tuko ang tinatawag sa tuko kasi ito yung mga karaniwang o narinig sa tuko. Okay? Next, under pa ng natural sound source is the pupu theory. This sound is original sounds may come from natural cries of emotion. So, sa emotion naman nagagaling yung tunog na ito. Okay? So, ang teoryang pupu, ang wikang ito ay nagmula raw sa mga salitang namutawi sa mga bibig ng sinaunang tao na nakakaramdam ng mga masidhing damdamin tulad ng tuwa, galit, sarap, kalungkutan, at pagkabigla. Ang halimbawa ng ang patalim ay tinatawag na ay sa baske sa kadahilan ng ay ang winika kapag nasaktan, like ay bilang aray. Okay, natural cries of emotion, samples like pain, like ouch, anger, disgust, yuck. These are produced with intakes of breath, but normal spoken language is produced when air is exhaled rather than inhaled. Next is under pa is euheo theory. This sounds made due to physical effort effort involving several people could be the source of our language, like grunts, groans, and curses. This theory is based on the social and cultural cooperation found among early men. However, apes have grunts but they do not have language like ours. So, ang teoryang Yoheo, batay po sa teoryang ito yung wika na nabuo mula sa pagsama-sama lalo na kapag nagtatrabaho ng magkakasama. Ang mga tunog o himig na namumutawi sa bibig ng tao kapag sila ay nagtatrabaho ng sama-sama ay sinasabing pinagmulan ng wika. So kapag sama-sama, dito daw nag-uumpisa o dito nila nakuha o nabuo ang kanilang mga wika. Pinaniniwalaan ng linguistang si A.S. Diamond na ang tao ay natutong magsalita bunga di umanos ng kanilang puwersang pisikal. Hindi nga ba tayo nakakalikha rin ng tunog kapag tayo nag-i-exert ng puwersa? Like physical force. Halimbawa, anong tunog na nalilikha natin kapag tayo nagbubuhat ng mabibigat na bagay kung tayo ay sumusuntok o nangangarate o kapag ang mga ina ay nanganganak. Which is the physical adaptation source under ng origins of language. This source depends on the physical features humans possess, especially those that are distinct from other creatures. So, ang mga ito naman ay ginagamit, ang wikang ito ay ginagamit ng paghinga. Ngunit ang normal na sinalitang winiwika ay galing sa kapag tayo ay nakakagawa ng salita sa pamamagitan ng pagbuga ng hangin mula o ng air from our mouth. Okay? Human physical features that helps language is human teeth are upright. Like for example, F and V. So F and V, diba, comes or from the upper teeth. Na nasasabi natin to from the upper teeth. The lips are made of intricate muscles like P and B. So nagko-close yung up and lower lip natin. The tongue is also helpful. Human larynx, voice box containing vocal cords, and pharynx for resonator. Human brain left hemisphere is most of the people is responsible for controlling the above organs of speech. Next is genetic source. Third one na tayo ng origins of language. So the reasons why physical adaptation takes place in humans and why deaf and dumb can be fluent sign language user is answered by supporters of Inetain's hypothesis. Human offsprings are born with a special capacity of language. So, kahit na ang bata ay pinanganak na bingi, ay nagiging matatas o nagiging maalam sa pag-sign language. So, ito yung mga body gestures, yung mga sign language na nakabuo pa rin ng wika. Okay. And lastly is the divine source. In most religions, language is considered as a gift from God. It is believed that if human infants grow up isolated, they spontaneously begin God-given language. It is believed that language is a God-given gift to human species. In Christianity, God gave Adam the kingdom of all animals in the Garden of Eden, and the first thing Adam did was to name these animals. That is how language starting according to religious sources. Today, people speak many different languages rather than only one language because ancient humans became too proud and they tried to build the Tower of Babel in order to reach God. So, God punished them by separating their languages. So, yung story ng Babel, matay sa story nito sa Biblia, iisa lang ang naging wika ng mga tao noon. Kung kaya't walang suliranin ang pakikipagtalastasan sa panahon nito. Ngunit naghangad ang mga tao na higitan ang kapangyarihan ng Diyos, naging mapagmataas at nag-ambisyong maabot ang langit. At nagtayo sila ng napakataas na tore na kung saan tinawag itong Tore ng Babel. Naging mapanghas at mayabang ang mga tao, subalit pinatunayan ng Diyos na higit siyang makapangyarihan sa pamamagitan ng kanyang kapangyarihan. Kaya't ang ginawa niya ay ginuho niya ang tore, ginawang magkakaiba ang wika ng bawat isa. At dito hindi magkaintindihan at naghiwalay-hiwalay ang mga tao sa kanilang mga sinasalita. Okay. People tried to discover the original divine language which was spoken by our most ancient ancestor. They assumed that if a child was brought up without hearing any language, the first word the child would utter would be in the divine language. Sa pamamagitan na lamang ng biblical references, ng religious references.
So our next topic is history of linguistics. Let us first define linguistics. Linguistics is a study of language, sometimes called the science of language. So the history of linguistics, tinatakal dito yung different eras, kung paano nag-contribute yung different eras na yun sa foundation of language. So, yung different eras is composed of first, the Antiquity, Middle Ages, Renaissance, early to mid 20th century, mid to late 20th century. So, first is the Antiquity, or what we call classical era. So, when we say Antiquity, unang pumapasok sa isip natin is about the Greek. So, the Greek linguistic traditions, dinefine niya yung language as a study within a philosophy. Kasi, sa Greek, well-known sila in terms of philosophies. So, pag sinabi nating philosophy, pumapasok dito yung philosophers. Pag sinabi nating philosophers, papasok dito yung logic. At pag sinabi natin logic, doon din papasok yung reasoning. So, yung mga Greek philosophers studied language by asking questions. So, tatlo yung ginamit nilang questions sa pag-found ng foundation ng language. Una is origin of language. Next is the relationship between language and thought. And next is the parts of a speech. So, unang philosopher na meron sa antiquity is si Plato. Plato, he was the first scholar to present a debate between the naturalists and the conventionalists in his book, Cratylus, in a form of dialogue in 3 persons. So, meron siyang book na Cratylus, dinidescribe niya doon or dinedefine niya doon yung language into 3 forms. So, una is naturalist, conventionalist, and neutral. So, pag sinabi natin naturalist, language is an imitation of a nature. Then, pag sinabi naman natin conventionalist, language is a result or agreement of or between 2 people. And pag sinabi naman natin neutral, pumapagitna siya, pinaghalo siyang naturalist and conventionalist. So, pwedeng imitation of nature, pwede ring agreement between 2 people. Then, sa book niya, dinivide niya yung sentences into 2 grammatical categories. So, una, tinanong niya what we talk about, and next is what we say about. So, what we talk about, doon niya na-discover na pag sinabing what we talk about, doon papasok yung subject. Kaya, subject name or doon na-discover yung noun. Tapos, pag sinabing what we say about, doon naman papasok yung verb. So, si Plato, ang contribution niya dito sa antiquity or sa foundation of language is yung verb tsaka yung noun. The next is si Aristotle. He was Plato's pupil and he was a conventionalist. So, kanina, dinefine ni Plato yung conventionalist tsaka naturalist. So, si Aristotle, siya yung nasa side ng conventionalist. Tapos, siya din yung nag-define a word, he defined a word, a linguistic unit. Tapos, siya din yung nag-add ng category of conjunction tsaka ng category of tenses. Next is the Stoics. They were naturalists because they believed that language is part of human knowledge. They gave the difference of form and meaning. So, yung difference of form and meaning, inadopt siya later on ni Ferdinand Saussure sa 20th century. Mamaya madidiscuss siya. Then, siya din yung nag-define ng distinction ng transitive and intransitive verbs. Tapos siya rin nag-introduce ng active tsaka passive voice. So next is the Greek Alexandrians from Alexandria. So dito sa the Greek Alexandrians, ang kinontribute niya is yung in-introduce niya yung anomaly versus analogy. So they studied the literary text and they focus on the study of written form of language. So, inintroduce niya yung anomaly versus analogy through debate. Analogies explains that language is regular, meaning it cannot be changed, while anomalies explains that language is irregular, meaning it can change maybe through time. The next philosopher is Dionysius Thrax. He wrote the first grammar of the Greek language. He was long considered to be the author of the earliest grammatical text in the Greek language, one that was used as standard manual for perhaps somehow 1,500 years, and which was until recently regarded as a groundwork of the entire Western grammatical tradition. So, meron ditong dalawang Western grammatical tradition na nag-contribute din sa history of linguistics. So, unang tradition is Indian tradition. Dito merong Indian scholar named Panini. Siya yung nag-study ng language ng India, which is yung Sanskrit para ma-protect or ma-preserve yung religious text ng India, which is yung Vedas. And then, he studied the phonetics and then yung morphology. Then, next tradition is yung Roman tradition. So, Roman tradition, they imitated the Greeks. They took the grammar of Dionysius Thrax, yung libro niya, kinuha ng Roman scholars para ma-study yung Latin language. Then, they introduced the art of correct speech or parts of the speech. The next is yung Middle Ages. So, sa Middle Ages, Latin was the dominant language of religion, culture, educations, and politics. The objective, so dito, education yung pinaka-importante sa Middle Ages kasi dito parang sa Middle Ages na ang nakakapag-aral pa lang is yung mga nasa elite members, yung mga anak ng hari, reyna, and then yung mga mayayaman or may kaya lang. Then, yung objective ng scholars dito is yung describe the Latin language for pedagogical purposes. So, for teaching siya. So, meron ditong speculative grammar is a theory of language study during the late Middle Ages. Speculative grammarians search for a universal grammar that can be applied for different languages. So, dito na-establish or dinidiscover yung pagkakaroon ng universal grammar or universal language para magkaroon ng communication between different countries para pwedeng may apply yung universal grammar na yun or language sa iba't ibang languages din. So next is the Renaissance. This is the age of discovery, the rebirth of official languages. So dito na na-establish yung iba't ibang languages ng iba't ibang lugar, gaya ng mga French, English or Spanish, and many more. Then, it was a period of the rebirth of the ancient civilizations, particularly itong civilizations na to is the Roman and the Greek. Then, many dictionaries were produced, so unti-unti nang lumalaganap yung language. Then, there was a need to translate the Bible into other language. So, ayun din yung reason sila, kaya sila nag-study para magkaroon ng universal language and para ma-translate nila yung Bible, hindi lang sa isang language, pati rin sa iba't ibang language.
Early to mid-20th century, the father of modern linguistics is Ferdinand de Saussure. He said, "Language is like a chess, the game which exists as a set of rules and functions with endless possibilities to be played out." So dito sinasabi niya, chess is like a language. The top players are very fluent at it. Talent can be developed scientifically, but you have to find first what you are good at. So Saussure stressed the interaction at any one time of elements in language structures and maintained that these were interrelated in a network of relations. And Ferdinand de Saussure published in a book of posthumously. Mid to late 20th century, the generative linguistics and the search for universals. Generative grammar was invented and developed by Noam Chomsky. The book that he published is The Syntactic Structures. The generative approach to language change sees it primarily as a rule change, which becomes part of the internalized grammar of a certain generation and remains so until replaced by another rule change. So dito mananatili hanggang sa mapalitan ng isa pang rule change ang language. This type of change is always binary rule, is either present or not, and as such, has been rejected by many, notably by sociolinguists. So dito ang mga sociolinguists ang nag-argue that there is often a variable application of rules and that speakers can have a command of several subsystems whose use is to determine by external social factors. So this is the history of the linguistic.
Now, let's proceed to relationship between language and culture. So, number 1 is homologous relationship, meaning language is culture and culture is language. So, parehas po silang nagde-develop and sabay silang nagde-develop. So, kung makikita nyo po dun sa PowerPoint natin, dun sa may iceberg, makikita na yung culture po is hindi lang about the literature, the tradition, the festivals, and holidays. So, makikita din po dun na ang culture is about our non-verbal communications such as yung mga facial expressions po natin, yung mga body gestures, and such.
Paralanguage. Paralanguage is the area of nonverbal communication that emphasizes body language and voice nuances as means of expressing thoughts and feelings such as yung pitch o yung taas ng boses o yung baba niya, yung tono ng pananalita, yung intonation, volume, facial expressions at marami pang iba. Ang pinaka-most obvious type ng paralanguage ay yung body language o yung tinatawag na kinesics. Tumutukoy dito yung posture, yung galaw, yung expression, lalo na yung gestures. Sinasabi na napakahalaga ng paralanguage sa pag-i-interpret ng isang culture. Kunin na nating halimbawa yung sa Japan. Hindi ba't yung pinaka-popular culture nila, yung anime o yung manga? Hindi ba't doon sa voice acting o doon sa mga voice actors, naririnig doon o nakikita doon yung pitch, tone, intonation, volume sa mga sinasabi nila. Na kahit hindi nakikita yung mukha nila, tungo dun sa boses nila, sa voice acting, malalaman pa rin natin yung message o yung content nung sinasabi nila dahil dun sa paralanguage. It depends on the society you are in. So, when you grow up in a specific society, It is important to learn the glances, the gestures, or even the changes in your voice or tone. Yung paralanguage na ito ay natututunan daw sa immediate environment mo. Isa na dito yung parents mo, yung relatives mo, friends, classmates, o kung sino man yung mga nakakasalamuha mo. Isang halimbawa na dito ay ang Cavite. Hindi ba't ang daming nagsasabi na parang lagi daw galit kung magsalita yung mga taga Cavite? Na kung magsalita daw ay parang nangahamon o may pinaglalaban. Kahit na normal speaking voice lang natin yon. Kaya daw ganun magsalita ang karamihan sa mga taga Cavite ay dahil na rin sa impluensya ng mga ninuno nating revolusyonaryo. At hindi ba't kilala ang Cavite sa pagiging tahanan ng mga sikat na bayani gaya nila Bonifacio? Dito, makikita natin kung paano na-impluensyahan ng ating kultura yung paraan ng ating pagsasalita. Isa pang halimbawa dito ay yung sikat na Filipino expression na ang dami mong alam. Kung bago ka lang sa Pilipinas, tapos sinabihan ka na, oo na, ang dami mong alam. Siyempre, dahil di siya lumaki dito, hindi niya alam yung kultura ng mga Pilipino. Maaaring isipin niya na compliment talaga yun sa kanya na marami talaga siyang alam. Dito, makikita natin kung gaano ka-importante yung tono ng pagsasalita o yung paralanguage para maintindihan natin yung isang kultura at maiwasan yung hindi pagkakaintindihan. Example na natin yung pagbebeso-beso sa ibang bansa. Sa kanila, normal lang yung pagkikis sa cheeks o minsan nga ay lips to lips as a form of greeting. Kung dito sa Pilipinas, ginagawa yon pero ngayon, hindi na siya gaanong pinapractice. Mas lalo na yung mga nasa bagong henerasyon ngayon. So, maaari magkaroon ng misinterpretation sa culture na to. Na kapag nakita nila nagbeso-beso yung lalaki, o nag-kiss, baka isipin nila na, bakla sila, kaya ganun. O kaya yung asawa mo, nakita mo na tawag doon, nag-kiss sa ibang tao, na ano lang daw, beso-beso lang daw. Syempre, magkakaroon ng misinterpretation doon at baka mauwi pa kayo sa tulfo. So dito, makikita natin na napaka-importante ng paralinguistics para maintindihan natin yung kultura ng iba at maiwasan yung hindi pagkakaintindihan. Isa na ring halimbawa rito yung culture ng mga nasa South Asia, gaya ng Japan at Korea. Nagbabaw sila sa kanilang mga senior, nakakataas, o sa mas matanda as a form of greeting at pagpapakita ng respeto o paggalang sa kanila. Napaka-importanting malaman ito ng mga tao, lalo na sa mga nagbabalak pumunta sa mga bansang ito. Dahil you might come off as disrespectful kung hindi ka magpapakita ng sign of respect o pagbabaw sa kanila, which can lead to misunderstanding. Implication for teaching and the transmission of language and culture. Children take on their first language from their exposure to random words they encounter in and out of their homes. The initial knowledge of the child about the essential structure and vocabulary of the first language was learned before the child went to school. Hindi teacher ang unang magtuturo sa mga bata, kundi yung first and immediate environment niya, gaya na lamang nung magulang niya o yung kapamilya niya. Nakadepende sa environment niya kung paano siya matututong magsalita. For example, sa panahon ngayon, nakakatulong yung technology gaya ng mga videos, cartoons sa pagdevelop ng communication skills ng mga bata. Sa katunayan nga, hindi lang wikang Pilipino ang natututunan ng mga bata. Dahil sa mga pinapanood nila gaya ng Cocomelon, natututo din silang mag-English, kung kaya't marami na sa mga bata ngayon ay English speaking na, through the help of media. Tapos dito sa meme na to, yung bata ay kumakanta na ng Blackpink. Ito ay dahil sa environment ng bata. Kung yung ate niya lagi nagpapatugtog ng K-pop, maaaring ma-pick up to ng bata at matutunan through observation at imitation. So napaka-importante ng language and culture sa pag-shape ng communication skills ng mga bata. Kaya kung ang bata ay nasa toxic environment, maaaring may ma-pick up siyang mura o negative words. Teachers must instruct their students on the cultural background of language usage. Sa pagtuturo ng language, hindi lang puro construction of letters, words, sentences, o yung grammar yung tinuturo ng teacher. Dapat kaakibat din dito yung culture behind the language na tinuturo niya. Kung magtuturo ang teacher ng language lang at hindi kasama yung culture, then the students are only learning empty and meaningless symbols or words. Parang wala lang din yung tinuturo niyang language kung walang kasamang culture. 'Di ba dun sa mga textbooks ng Filipino at English, lagi may kasamang literature na sumasalamin sa culture. Nandito yung mga mythologies, alamat, historical backgrounds, pati na rin yung mga etymology o yung mga pinanggalingan ng salita na nagpapakita ng culture. The students, when using the learned language without culture, may use the language inappropriately or within the wrong cultural context, thus defeating the purpose of learning a language. Nangunguna na sa mode of transmission yung pagsasalita orally at verbally. At syempre, pati na rin yung pagsusulat, which is napakahalaga sa pagdodokumento ng mga informations at mga pangyayari, lalo na sa history. At ang pinaka-prominent na mode of transmission ay yung teknolohiya. Mas napabilis yung pag-transmit ng mga message o pag-transmit ng language at culture dahil na rin sa tulong ng makabagong teknolohiya.
So number 4 is language and culture shape and influence the mindsets, values, and perceptions of people. So makikita po natin na philosophy yung unang picture kasi po malaking tulong po yung philosophy to shape our culture. Pero yung philosophy po is ginagamitan ng language, and for us to mold the culture, kailangan po natin ng language. So next po is yung paggamit po ng po at opo. So alam naman po natin na Filipinos are known sa paggamit po ng po at opo, and through this po is nakikita po yung culture nating mga Filipino sa paggamit ng language na to. Tapos next po is the 10 commandments. So nagbibigay po tayo ng pag po may narinig tayong certain people na konyo magsalita, parang nagiiwan po sila ng mindset sa atin na sila yung mga social na tao, sila yung mga mayayaman. And also, ibig sabihin po, malaking impact po yung language sa pag-shape ng culture. So, 5 po is intercultural interaction. So, first bullet is communication unifies different societies in the world by understanding the culture of others through the expression or use of language. And next is essential for international communication and cooperation. So, kung makikita po natin sa picture, yung Blackpink with Selena Gomez, so hindi po naging hadlang yung language barrier. Although magkakaiba po ng country, is nag-merge pa rin po yung culture nila through language. And next po is yung tayo, mga Filipinos, namumulat na rin po tayo sa K-drama. So, parang nagiging hobby na rin po, parang ini-entertain na rin po ng country natin yung K-dramas. And wala pong naging problema doon dahil sa language. So, yung language po is malaking tulong para maintindihan natin yung culture ng ibang bansa. And na-adapt na din po natin sila kahit papano. So, next po is yung Get Out na movie and yung Black Lives Matter. So, through language po is naging eye-opener po sa atin siya. Although, hindi po siya issue ng country natin, pero naging eye-opener po siya kasi naintindihan natin yung language nila, and na-impart po yun sa culture natin na stop natin yung stigma or yung racism and discrimination.
Totoo ngang kaya ng wika at kultura na ipagbuklod ang mga tao, ngunit sa ibang aspeto ay nagkakaroon pa rin ng diversity. Further, different groups may speak one language, but there will be subsets used by different groups of people. Language is used in different ways and broadly. The linguistic varieties could be categorized into different cultural backgrounds. Una na rito yung geographical, which is used only in particular parts of the community. Maaaring nasa iisang bansa o lipunan tayo, ngunit nahati-hati naman tayo sa ating iba't ibang salita. Kung karamihan sa parte ng ating bansa ay gumagamit ng Tagalog, yung iba naman gumagamit ng ibang dialekto gaya ng Ilocano, Bisaya, Ilonggo at marami pang iba. At dahil nga sa mga dialektong ito, nagkakaroon ng diversity sa ating mga Pilipino. Halimbawa na lang sa mga sumusunod na slide. Ayan, hindi ko na sila babanggitin. Makikita sa mga nagdaan na slides sa PowerPoint presentation. So, maaaring magdulot ng di pagkakaintindihan ang iba't ibang grupo na may ibang dialekto, kung kaya't kahit nasa iisang bansa na tayo, dahil sa mga iba't ibang pananalita natin, ay nahahati pa rin tayo. Societal varieties used by societal groups based on occupation, gender, and age. Isang halimbawa na rito, yung bagong uri ng pagsasalita ng mga kabataan ngayon na hindi naiintindihan ng mga matatanda. Example na yung mga idioms or Filipino expressions. Pati na rin yung mga salita gaya ng charot, kemerut, at iba pa. At syempre, may mga salita rin yung mga matatanda na masyadong malalim para maintindihan ng mga bata. Dito, makikita ang pagkakaiba ng wika at kultura ng mga kabataan at matatanda. Function, used based on function and situation. Example na dito yung mga English expressions gaya sa Harry Potter. Kung sa mga Europeans, naintindihan nila yung Merlin's beard, syempre tayong mga Pilipino, karamihan sa atin iisipin na, bakit? Anong meron sa balbas ni Merlin? Sino ba yun si Merlin? At gaya nga rin ang sinabi ko kanina, yung ang dami mong alam, sige ikaw na matalino, na tayong mga Pilipino lang din yung nakakaintindi, na hindi naman alam ng ibang lahi o kultura. Evolution and constant change of language and culture. Di ba sinasabing culture is dynamic? It changes through periods of time. Siyempre, pati na rin yung language na laging kasama ng culture. Pareho silang dalawang nagde-develop at nag-iimpluwensyahan sa isa't isa sa paglipas ng panahon. Halimbawa na rito ay noong sinakop tayo ng mga Kastila. Maraming aspeto ng kultura natin ang naimpluwensyahan ng mga Espanyol, gaya ng relihiyon, tradisyon, paniniwala at kabilang na rin rito ang ating wika. Ang salitang Tagalog na ginagamit natin ngayon ay hindi talaga galing sa purong Pilipino. Nahawaan na rin ito ng wikang Espanyol.
And so, nag-evolve po yung language natin. So, tulad po nun, may mga nadadagdag sa language natin. Tulad ng mga judgment words, yung mga conno words, yung mga gay lingo. And somehow, may part din po siya sa culture natin. So,
Maging sa pagbabago ng music, ay may kinalaman ang wika at kultura. Kung noon, nasa culture na nila yung masyadong modest, conservative at formal yung mga kanta o lyrics na ginagamit sa music, gaya na lamang ng mga classical music, malaking issue na nga agad sa kanila yung mga vulgar o provocative words. Ngayon, parang naging normal na lang yon at mas nagiging popular pa nga kung tutuusin. Yung mga lyrics ng kanta ngayon ay karamihan tungkol sa sex, drugs, na minsan nga ipine-perform pa sa mga school programs na parang di na big deal masyado yon. Bilang konklusyon, makikita may matinding pagbabago sa wika at kultura sa paglipas ng panahon.